Hello everyone, and welcome to your next history lesson.
Ew, history.
Our last lesson we looked at the earliest civilizations. We looked at ancient Egypt, ancient Sumeria, Indus Valley and the Shang dynasty, and we looked at when they existed, where they existed and some of their achievements. We had a quick overview of that, okay? But now we're going to focus on the ancient Egyptians. This is going to be our in-depth topic. So to start with, we're going to find out what we do and what we don't know about the ancient Egyptians. And we're going to begin to ask questions that we might be able to find out about them throughout the topic. So to do this, we're going to be analysing different elements of ancient Egyptian life to figure out the different aspects of them. This is really important because it's called using sources of evidence. It's really important for historians and scientists because these give us clues about the people of the past. Now, historians in 1,000 years, they're going to have a pretty good idea about our lives now because we have so much writing. We've got it in books, we've got it in newspapers, we've got it all over the internet. We've got videos and we've got pictures and photographs. But in the past, there wasn't always a lot of these things, and there certainly weren't photographs or videos back in ancient Egyptian times. Okay, we've got these pictures and stone carvings and things, but they wear away over time. Now, it's difficult for us to interpret what the past was like because of this. Okay, that means that we don't always have the clear picture that we want about them. Now, what's interesting though about that, about using these sources of evidence, is that people can start to branch off into different ways of thinking rather than just kind of everybody agreeing on the same thing. So we might have one particular item and three people looking at it, and each of those three people think something slightly different about it, about what that means for those people. So say you find a certain picture or a piece of writing. If you don't fully understand it, you've kind of then got to start thinking about it and questioning what that piece of writing or that picture is and what it means. Okay? Because then at that point we need to start finding more and more evidence to back up what we think, and that's the whole point of history, is to really start to piece everything together so that we have a better interpretation of the past. And that's a really important word, interpretation. Okay, that's what we think of the past, how we put the past together. So here's how this is going to work today. The video is going to be split into three sections. The first is going to be analysing a set of pictures linked to the Egyptians. Each picture will last about 4 or 5 seconds on the screen, but you can pause the video to make it last a little bit longer. The second section will then show you some artefacts that have been discovered. Now, normally, of course, we'd hand these out or similar things out in the classroom, but obviously we can't do that. So we're going to use some 3D models that have been scanned by archaeologists and museums from all around the world. Pretty amazing. Again, you can pause the video to take a little bit longer, look at a particular object or detail. Now, for these two sections, what we'd like you to do is to write down 3 things about each picture or object, either about what you can tell from this piece of evidence. Perhaps it tells you what the Egyptians believed in. It might be the types of materials that they had access to. It might be about the roles of men and women, because, well, we know that not every group of people treat men and women the same. If you look at the Greeks and the Romans, women had nowhere near the same amount of rights or powers as men did. So what do these pictures and these objects tell us about the life of the Egyptians? Or you might want to write down some questions about each of these things. Maybe you can't tell something straight away. So maybe you want to ask, who is this person? What did they do? What material is this made from? Why are they doing what they're doing? Was this just from ancient Egypt, or did other people or places have something similar? Finally, there'll be a reading of one version of the Egyptian creation story. Now, that's really important that I've said one version. What does that mean? What does that tell you then about the ancient Egyptians and their creation stories? And then again, we want you to write down 3 things that you can tell about the Egyptians from this story. So keep hold of your notes after the lesson so that you can keep going back to them and see if you can find the answers to any of the questions that you've written down. Don't forget to send your teachers any work that you've done so they can see what you're up to, and they might even want to find the answers to some of your questions. Section 1. Photographs and pictures. What can you tell about the Egyptians from each of these pictures? Write down at least 3 things about each picture. Section 2. 3D artifacts. What can you tell about the Egyptians from each of these artifacts? Write down at least 3 things about each artifact. Section 3. Creation story reading. This is one popular story about how the Egyptians thought that their world was created. What does this creation story tell us about the people of ancient Egypt and their beliefs? Once upon a time, a long time ago, when the earth was new and everything was just beginning, the earth was covered with water. An egg floated on the water, just one egg. When that egg hatched, Ra was born. Ra did not want to spend his time floating around, doing nothing, so he flew into the sky and became the sun. Ra dried up much of the water and made the land. Ra was lonely, so he made a wife. He named her Nut. Ra made many gods and goddesses to keep him company. He put them all to work. His children were very busy running the world. Still, they took time out to have children, because children were glorious things to have. Soon, there were many gods and goddesses. Ra was the father, or the grandfather, or the great-grandfather of them all. All children are glorious, but to Ra, one child was especially important. That child was his grandson, Osiris. Osiris had a brother named Set. Ra thought Set was okay, but his favourite by far was Osiris. To show Osiris how much he was loved, Ra made Osiris the first pharaoh of Egypt. Osiris married Isis, his one true love, and the king, Osiris, and queen, Isis, settled down quite happily with their son, Prince Horus. Set was terribly jealous. Why should Osiris be named pharaoh and not him? In a fit of anger, Set killed his brother Osiris and chopped him into little pieces. He threw the pieces into the Nile River. Set was sure he would get away with this murder, but rumours tend to spread quickly. Isis soon heard about what Set had done. Isis managed to gather the pieces of her beloved Osiris. She brought these pieces to her good friend Anubis, the jackal-headed god. He managed to put the pieces of Osiris together again. But he did not have the power to bring him back to life, so that Osiris could retake his place beside his beloved Isis and rule Egypt as king. When the great Ra heard about it, he was furious. He gave Osiris a new job, an even better job. He made Osiris the god of the dead, which was the most important job of all. Osiris could rule over the land of the dead and be dead himself. In fact, he would have to be dead to enter the land of the dead, so things worked out very well. Or so Ra believed. When the young Prince Horus heard what his uncle Set had done, although he was still only a boy, he tracked down his uncle Set and murdered him. Isis was grateful to her friend Anubis, and to her son Horus, and to her grandfather Ra. But nothing anyone could do would bring Osiris back to her. He would dwell forever in the land of the dead, and she would live forever in the land of the living. Isis knew that she would never see her beloved husband again. In honour of the god Osiris, the kings, pharaohs, of Egypt carry a crook and a flail, the signs of Osiris. The crook especially became the sign of rulers. The crook looked a great deal like a snake and was made out of wood. They used wood because wood was scarce. That made it even more special. From then on, and even today, once each year, Isis travels to the riverbank, remembering and dreaming. Tears fall from her eyes. That is why the Nile River rises each year, to bring life to everyone and everything along the Nile. When Isis cries, the Nile will arise, and that is a very important thing. So don't forget to send your work to your teacher so they can see what you've done, and hopefully we'll see you next time.